blown away by how many people showed up at 8 a.m. So, this is an awesome group.
And we're awake.
Yeah, well, most of you at least. So I'm Cole Hershkowitz, have a good familiarity with Pasadena, went to Caltech, lived on Chester Street twice, lived on Mentor Street twice, and lived on campus once, so I know the neighborhood pretty well. Before Caltech, I went to Oberlin College, studied liberal arts, environmental studies, and physics there. Did this 3-2 engineering program where you do 3 years liberal arts, 2 years engineering. Finished that out at Caltech, got both degrees. I think it's great for entrepreneurship because it kind of allows you to think holistically while at the same time understanding the technical details and nuances of whatever it is you're working on. It's great to be in Pasadena today. My barber is in Pasadena and I'm in severe need of a haircut. So thank you guys for inviting me. During my time at Caltech, yeah, I thought of that one a little bit ago. It was not the spot. During my time at Caltech, I started with a couple other students the Solar Decathlon project to build a net zero solar powered home. Have been really passionate and interested in sustainability for quite some time. Doing mechanical engineering at Caltech kind of afforded me the time to go do that. It's actually it's promoted as one of the easier majors at Caltech, especially when you're not doing very well in your classes. So I was able to focus in on the Solar Decathlon. We built Smart Home as part of that. We led a computing systems team, built the first iPad app that allowed you to control your home. We hacked Xbox Connect to create a system where you could point at lights to turn them on and off. It was kind of this gestural system, very intuitive, very interactive, had severe limitations, but it was a really great demonstration. Left Caltech, as Mike mentioned, went to work at Southern California Edison. Probably the most important thing I learned there is, at least at this point in my life, having a job at a company that large with the boss that I had was not for me. So I spent about a year there before kind of saying, this is the best time in my life to jump off and start a company. I'd always wanted to start a company. In high school, I bought candy at Costco and resold it under the guise of the Muslim youth club with my friend who was Muslim. So I'd always done ventures like that. Knew I wanted to take everything I learned at Caltech, everything I was passionate about in sustainability, was at the utility company, kind of saw this emergence of this massive data set, which I'll get into in a second, and said there's a company to be built here. But before that, I think the most interesting stuff in all this is kind of the historical context. So I put together this presentation. This is the first time I've done it this way. But it goes into a little bit about the history of the utility industry. And I think it's interesting. I hope you guys do too. So back in pre-1900s or around 1900, we had the whole battle of Edison versus Tesla. Edison had finally created a light bulb that worked. He was starting to put it in people's homes, and he was wiring up homes. He started with rich people, started up market, much like Elon Musk is doing today, and then started to bring it down market as he kind of created this grid, this interconnected grid. You'd have a little mini power plant, a diesel generator, or I guess it wasn't diesel at the time, but a generator on the corner. Maybe every block would have one. You had this very distributed energy grid, much like we're seeing today with solar. And so Edison promoted and supported DC power. Tesla supported AC power. Without getting into the technical nuances, AC power is a lot easier to transfer over long distances. So you ended up having this battle of Edison versus Tesla. And apparently, I don't know, is this a movie that was made after it? It's like a board game. Board games have been made to memorialize this. It also comes up on Google Images. So at some point, GE, which I guess is Edison owned, created these massive, so originally you would have diesel generators. These are a lot like what's in your car. These are a lot like what's in your car. They have pistons that go up and down. You put gasoline in them, explosions happen, things move up, it turns into a rotation, and they generated power that way. At some point, somebody figured out that you could create far larger, far more efficient, far cheaper systems by creating these steam turbines, where you just create a giant boiler, you boil water, water flows through a massive spinning turbine, kind of like on an airplane, and you can make power far more efficiently and far more efficiently at scale. These things scale up way large. As you can imagine, having a chamber as big as a human where there's an explosion and it's going back and forth, the wear and tear on that sort of thing is immense. So these things were made. This guy named Sam. Oh, where did that happen? I guess I have a clicker to do that. So this guy named Samuel Insull, who most people don't know about, I didn't know about until I read this book, and he was kind of in the footnotes. He saw this. He was president of the Chicago Edison Company, and he saw that these giant generators were far more efficient, and he bought a bunch. And when he bought these giant generators, he had a ton of surplus power, and he started selling that power to other utility companies. With that revenue, he started buying up those other utility companies, shutting down their inefficient steam generators, or not steam, inefficient diesel generators. And you had this kind of consolidation of the industry. He did a bunch of other innovative things. Actually, early on, I don't know if you guys know about the electrical peak we have today, but there's a peak in power around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, largely driven by air conditioners, people at work, people at home just leaving things on. And back in this time, the peak was at 7, 8, 9, because the only thing people would power were light bulbs. And Insull, as an industrial efficiency expert or pioneer, realized this and said, we have a ton of power, we have a ton of capacity, we have a ton of these generators sitting idle in the middle of the day. Can we do something with them? Does anyone want to buy this power in the day? No one wanted to buy light bulbs, so they went to Insull, or Insull said, hey, I can give you electricity for half the price. Why don't you power your streetcar, your street trolley with this? Why don't you power lights in your cold warehouse? He found a bunch of different businesses that wanted to use power during the day. So he kind of pioneered this idea. And this is kind of an aside, but I think it's interesting. He pioneered this idea of trying to create a relatively even load shape in the grid, because that's a more efficient grid, increasing the power factor is what the website that I saw called it, although I don't think that's right. So eventually he bought up a bunch of companies and created a company called Commonwealth Edison, owning vast areas around Illinois, Chicago, Cleveland, maybe Cleveland. But he kind of created this consolidated company. And a lot of other companies throughout the country saw that this was being done. They started to follow his model. And where's the story take us from there? So it kind of was preceding this whole idea when FDR started busting up trusts. And you had this idea, this concept of a natural monopoly. And I don't know what this chart means, right? Probably can figure it out, but this essentially is economics telling us that certain industries are very well suited from a customer perspective to become a monopoly. If you have 7 electric companies and they're all buying tiny little generators and they're all running wires from your house to your neighbor's house, you have a very capital ineffective system. You're recreating infrastructure over and over and over again. You're kind of fighting against economies of scale. So the idea is that there's certain industries that are well suited for monopolies. The electric company, railroads, water utilities, later on in time, communication carriers like AT&T, they all kind of were put in this bucket of natural monopolies. Let's see. So you have this monopoly that grew, and as part of that, the government was trying to bust up all these trusts. They busted Standard Oil, sugar companies, tobacco companies, or maybe not sugar companies, but a bunch of companies throughout the industry. And they turned at some point to the utility companies and said, should these be broken up? Should these utility companies be broken up? And the trade-off, the compromise, which I guess is the New Deal, although I didn't research that much, but the compromise became, this is a fun slide. The compromise became, as a natural monopoly, you can have and maintain your monopoly. This happened to AT&T, it happened to utility companies, as long as the government can regulate you and protect the customer. Because as a monopoly, as a corporate monopoly, you have a lot of power over customers, over your end users. You can change price and they literally can't go anywhere. So there became these regulatory bodies, public utility commissions, kind of state by state, which started regulating utility companies and protecting the customer, and at the same time protecting the utilities and the utility shareholders as well. So you ended up these monopolies that grew, and at the time, back in the early 1900s, 1910, 2030 or something, you had about 10 utility companies that comprised 75% of investor-owned utility not market cap, but just power that they sold. And those utilities persisted all the way until the modern day. And they kind of divided up areas, territories by region. Utilities had regions that they operated in exclusively. And that's kind of how the world worked for 60, 70 years. And these are largely those utilities. And Berkshire Hathaway wasn't there back then, as far as I know. But many of these other utilities are the same utilities, the holding companies of many utilities that existed back then. You can look at Exelon, they own many utilities, Pepco, Baltimore Gas and Electric, Constellation. So a lot of these guys, Edison International owns Generation, owns all of Southern California. A lot of them own a lot of different assets. They're all kind of holding companies, and the trade-off again was they get regulated in return for a monopoly that's sanctioned by the government. So fast forward to 1970, we had the oil embargo. We ran out of gas prices spiked, people started to become aware of energy as an issue. Energy is not a resource that nuclear power is going to make too cheap to meter. It's going to become something that we actually need to be careful about. There's this idea of climate change that started to evolve, I believe a bit after then. But climate became an important thing around here with, what were the issues? There was a climate cooling at some point that happened because we were spewing particles into the atmosphere. So people started to realize burning energy, burning fossil fuels has an impact on our environment, it has an impact on our economy. Let's see what we can do to help this. The regulators, of course, being the one responsible for the consumer and for the actual people out there, the ratepayers, ended up creating policies that promoted energy efficiency, demand response, which I'll get into as a concept, throughout the state. So this is kind of a graph that if you've ever taken an environmental studies class, you'll see. But it essentially shows that since the 70s, so this, we had a growth curve like this in energy consumption. And then in the 70s, California and many other states too adopted very strict energy efficiency policies. They put a lot of money to replacing refrigerators, better insulating homes. A lot of different things have been done over the years. And you can see that California's energy use has flattened despite our continued GDP growth. In the US, that hasn't been the case as much because there hasn't been as much energy efficiency investment. But the idea here is that if you invest in energy efficiency, you can flatten out the coupled nature of energy and GDP. This other concept, which kind of harkens back to what I was talking about before about the shape of the load on the grid, is this idea of demand response. So demand response is instead of producing power to meet every single time anyone wants to turn on a light bulb, let's actually try to impact when people turn on light bulbs. So originally I was saying Sam Insull went out and found trolley cars that could use power during the day when he had a bunch of excess power. Modern times, this concept is kind of known as demand response. Also, load shaping and time of use rates have an impact. But the idea is, let's find the times when prices of electricity are the most expensive, and instead of turning on that power plant that exists to only turn on for these 5 days, 10 days a year, let's just ask people to reduce energy usage. Let's just ask people to turn off their light bulbs. So that's demand response. Again, a huge market, a growing market. And then in the 90s, I was young at the time, I read a book that told this. In the 90s, we had deregulation of electric markets, and many states started to deregulate. And what deregulation was, it wasn't true deregulation. You weren't creating an open marketplace for everything energy. What they were essentially doing is they took energy retail, which is who I send my money to and who buys power for me. They were saying any company with a couple restrictions can do that. Any company can sell you power, and this is taking shape in many states out east. Oh, this is the map I want. Many states out east, all these red states, full deregulation. Customers can choose whatever power provider they want, And then the power lines, which remember are the asset that created that natural monopoly. We wanted that natural monopoly because we were putting wires in the ground, because we have these enormous generation facilities. Those are run by a regulated monopoly. So there's a regulated monopoly in every single one of these red states here. These states are not voting for Donald Trump. They're deregulated energy states. There are, what was I saying? There are laws there where there's a company there who runs the power lines, who gets paid for the power lines. There's this idea called a guaranteed rate of return, which is how things work in California, how things work in many of these states. Essentially, when the utility company says they want to build a power line, and they want to build a substation. Then they go to the regulators, they say, hey, regulators, can we build this? It's for the customer's good. It helps in this way, this way, and this way. The regulator says yes or no. If the regulator says yes, the utility company will go and spend $1,000 to put that power line in the ground, and then every one of your electric rates gets adjusted up very slightly to get the utility company that $1,000 back over a certain period of time, and then they make some profit on top of that. So it's called the guaranteed rate of return. That's how these companies work that run the power lines. And then on the other side, there are energy retailers now in these red states who will sell you power, buy power on the open market, and then pay the utility, the transmission company, the company that put in all these power lines, to use their power lines. So this is kind of the state of the market. And then Enron happened, a lot of these states were turning red, and then everything kind of froze in the state it was in. And they said, well, let's take a step back, we're deregulating too quickly, things are too crazy. So California is still orange, many other states are still orange. But the red states fundamentally have deregulated retail energy. You can buy energy from anyone. Okay, so then we had this movie, which, The Inconvenient Truth, which was around here, and it was kind of like 5 minutes. Oh my God, sorry. I thought this was going to be short. So we had The Inconvenient Truth. You kind of had this curve that looked like this right then. People were like, oh, global warming might be a thing. We should be worried about it. We could be concerned about it. Over the last 10 years, this curve hasn't stopped. This is annual average temperatures. And it's kind of reignited people's, post the 1970s, reignited people's interest in renewable energy. Energy efficiency is a big component of that, and making the grid more efficient. And meanwhile, you have, in people's pockets, they have iPhones, they have this massive technology that's changing things in a massive way. Since then, we've had the emergence of a national solar market, which now accounts for 1 million homes and about 1% of something. I think 1% of homes, roughly, are solar in the US, or just shy of that. And this is, again, happening in a deregulated way, kind of against the utilities' wishes. And then we have these energy efficiency budgets and demand response budgets that have grown immensely because of the oil embargo initially, and then more recently because of kind of our realization around global climate change and the impacts of carbon as an externality. So these things have grown, and they're still managed by the utility companies. And then in parallel to this, kind of the iPhone of utility companies, they've installed 50 million of what are effectively smart electric meters. They're effectively like your smartphone, but it's the meter on the outside of your home. It's digital, it can detect data every couple seconds. It has this wealth of data that these meters are creating. This is, to tie it back to the beginning, this is what I saw at Edison. Edison had just rolled out 5 million of these meters. Now we're at 50 million nationwide. And that data was just being dropped on the floor. They collected that data. They're a utility company who, remember, their expertise are building power lines, financing power lines, figuring out the optimal way to do that stuff. And they get all this data from our homes, and they just drop it on the ground, and they say, no one can use this. So we said, well, what if we create a company that can use that data for the benefit of the customer, that can figure out something useful to do with that data. So that's kind of the idea behind Chai. And then more recently, you're seeing this kind of movement. So I talked about those energy efficiency and demand response budgets previously. You're seeing these movements to take those budgets away from the natural monopoly of a utility company and push them into an open market setting. So already on the East Coast, demand response as a product is open to anyone to participate in. California, that's happening this year, and we as a company are actually a huge participant in that. We have the second most demand response capacity of any company in that program. PG&E is creating this, what they call pay for performance program. So energy efficiency, how it used to work is someone would do a 5-year study on refrigerators and show with massive amounts of data, these refrigerators are reducing energy consumption if we put them in homes. And then after that 5 years, utilities could go put them in homes and tell the regulators, hey, we reduced energy usage, we're doing our job, give us that checkbox. What you're having now, because of these meters, is you can create a system, and PG&E is doing this, where they're not going to pay people just for swapping out fridges. They can measure actual real-life energy reductions and pay you for those reductions. So you're seeing this opening of an open market where anyone can participate for energy efficiency. So that $4 billion that's going to utilities today is starting to go to third parties in a competitive way where truly innovative, truly interesting products win. And you're seeing a slew of companies kind of emerging around this energy ecosystem, emerging around data. I'll tell you at least a little bit about what we do, since maybe that's why I'm here. So we waste a ton of money in our homes, hundreds of dollars every year, just thrown down the drain. But the real problem with that waste is that there are tons of different ways to waste energy. Everyone's unique, everyone's personal. No one has the same, not everyone's kids leaves lights on. Some people actually know how to program their thermostat, and those people do exist. Some people have inefficient air conditioners, some people have new air conditioners. So the idea is that we all have energy waste. If we ever want to kind of confront that energy waste and try to reduce our bill, it's daunting, we don't know what to do. Our energy bill doesn't help, it just tells us how much we owe. Energy audits, if you guys are familiar with that, they're invasive. Someone comes into your home, you have to take a day off work, you have to schedule them to come into your home. They come in with this giant apparatus, they shove in your door. It makes your house look like it's a hazmat zone. It's a scary process that people don't understand. This is kind of what energy monitoring looks like today, energy monitoring as an industry. It shows you data. Some people can read this, some people can understand this, a lot of people cannot. So the idea behind CHAI is to take those meters and tell you very concretely, very specifically, very actionably, in a personal way, where you're wasting money on your bill and how you can get that money back. We have a bunch of features. You guys should check out the app if you're in Edison, Pacific Gas or Electric, or San Diego Gas and Electric territory. We have a program called Power Payday, where we will pay you to reduce your usage on specific demand response days. It's a way for you to actually benefit from the wholesale market prices of the grid. And we'll recommend solar if solar is a good fit for you. And I'll wrap it up there.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Cole. Very informative presentation on the history of electrical use. I know that you had to kind of rush through the bits and pieces on your startup, but don't worry, we're going to do a Q&A section. You guys can ask awesome questions and it'll provide awesome answers. Just for you guys that do not know what the format is, it's questions now, comments later if you guys want to share stories or pick his brain about his startup in a bit more of a storytelling fashion. Will you stick around a little bit after the presentation is over? Okay, great, thanks. So John will walk around with the mic. If you have a question, raise your hand. Thanks.
I love your presentation. I am one of the 1% that has a 110% solar power, on my home. However, the loophole in all of this is that Edison upcharges me to a minimum amount that I have to pay every month. So saving energy is now no longer in my lexicon because I am going to be charged regardless.
Until you get your electric vehicle, and then...
Well, I'm waiting for my Tesla.
Right.
I haven't seen it appear yet.
Right, well, when that appears, energy efficiency...
So as more solar is adopted, and the utilities are allowed to upcharge, I mean, there's something wrong with policy here.
So I first of all, I'm going to preface this with I love solar and I love what's happening with solar. I think a lot of people in the solar industry and a lot of solar customers don't recognize the fact that the way they get charged for solar is actually a subsidy, and it's okay that it's a subsidy, but it's, we created these net metering laws where when your solar runs, you can spin your meter backwards. When your solar's off, your meter spins forwards, and at the end of the month, we look at what your meter is, and we see did it go backwards or forwards, and we charge you for that. Yours, presumably, over the course of a year, is going backwards, and presumably, previously, you got charged 0 at the end of the year, right?
They paid me.
They paid you. Who do you have for your utility?
Edison.
Really, they paid you. So they paid her. So what happened is Edison, said, well, you guys are still connected to the grid. You're using our grid when the sun is running. It's providing a service to you. That service should somehow be captured in your rate. And that's how they've adjusted the rates, to try to capture the fact that the grid is effectively an endless, giant storage battery for your home. So if you were to cut the ties with the grid and you were to install batteries, they would actually be far more expensive than that $10 per month charge. But that's kind of rate design. So what you end up having, a lot of these renewables, which is a good thing again, are finding these nuances in the rates, and they're using that to become popular. There's a company called STEM, which is putting batteries in industrial facilities, commercial facilities. And what they do is there's this thing called a demand charge in a lot of commercial industrial facilities for their rates, where they get charged a ton. Essentially, they get charged for their energy consumption, and then they get charged for their peak consumption, because that's how thick the wires need to be to go to their building. So what STEM does is they put batteries in the building, and every time the power starts to peak up, those batteries discharge, lower that, and we've essentially financed a couple megawatts, if not more, of batteries in California, just based, actually tens of megawatts, if not hundreds of megawatts, just based off this nuance in the tariff, because batteries can reduce that demand charge. And technically, that's not the true cost of power that you're getting paid on the grid, but it's these nuances in the tariffs that allow renewables to kind of find these places to inject themselves in the market and grow their scale such that costs can come down. I don't know if that answers. I guess so. The end of that is energy. If you haven't gotten solar yet, energy efficiency becomes a very effective way to make solar pay itself back a lot faster, because energy efficiency offsets those highest peaks, the highest rates. We have this tiered rate structure, which is another kind of artificial rate that they created to try to promote things. It promotes energy efficiency substantially for people that have high bills. So for people that haven't gotten solar, energy efficiency as a product and service makes it better. Chai for You could help you understand how much your solar is producing, because if there's anything I know about people who have solars, they love to show other people their bill.
Oh yeah.
So you should get Chai, and then you can show people, this is how little I pay, except for this charge that is.
Is there a cost for chai?
No, it's free. There's 2 products. There's Chai Light and Chai Pro. Chai Light is free, works with Southern California Edison, PG&E, and SDG&E. Chai Pro is a little device. It's $50 today. If you email me, I can get it to you for free, because we have a partnership that's giving them away. And this collects second-by-second real-time data. And you can actually see the water shapes. Right.
Yeah, I'm on it.
All right, next question over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not solar because I don't want to get into the power generation business myself, maintaining the equipment and everything else. But my question to you is, therefore, for someone like me, how does Chai really help me, and how do you make money from that, other than selling the widget that you just showed us?
Yeah. So. Kind of talked about this demand response power paydays. These are, so we're essentially set up to buy and sell power in the open energy market. The open energy market has these immense price swings that go up and down very rapidly. You as an end customer, you pay a flat rate all the time, no matter what. And there's some nuances to that, but in general, it's a flat, predictable rate. When the prices in the wholesale energy market spike above your retail rate, we can actually ask you to reduce your consumption, pay you to reduce your consumption based off that spike, and then we'll take 20% of that. So that's our revenue model today. We have partnerships with the 3 major California utilities to provide couple megawatts. I think it's been reported as 20 megawatts in demand reductions in California. And that's the biggest model today. We also have a program where so that $3.9 billion in energy efficiency dollars, those are being deployed today very ineffectively. They're going to, Edison literally paid a couple $1 million for refrigerator magnets that said recycle your fridge. And they rate-based that, and in essence, they didn't pay for it, you all paid for it. So what we want to do is use data to deploy energy efficiency programs, energy efficiency rebates in a more targeted, more specific way. So we're beginning to pull money out from the regulators to promote energy efficiency on Chai. So those are kind of the two models. And we also do solar regeneration as well.
Back here, Cole. Over here.
Yeah.
Collier, it looks like your product is only being used by investor-owned utilities. What about the municipally owned utilities like Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena? Because the municipal utilities make their money. That's what pays for the city.
Yeah. I would love to work with Glendale. I used to live in Glendale. We're focusing on the largest. So the challenge for us in scaling is not the technical integration and collecting the data. It's finding those revenue streams to support acquisition and support ongoing maintenance. So it's a smaller deal to be cut with the municipal utility. So strategically, we're picking off the largest volume utilities first, and we're going to go down market as we scale. But I'm sorry that I get that a lot, and especially DWP. DWP doesn't even have smart electric meters. They actually have 50,000 smart electric meters that were funded by a DOE grant, but they can't talk to them. They don't have a network to talk to them. So, yeah, call up your council person, I guess.
Up front.
Oh, can I say one more thing on that? Sorry. So the easiest way for us to integrate with data connections is a standard called Green Button Connect, which was created by the White House and pushed down on utilities. It's really easy for us to integrate with a utility that has Green Button Connect. Currently, only major utilities have that. Municipal utilities don't have that. If they had that, our cost would be a lot lower to integrate. So that's another thing. So tell your utility support Green Button Connect. Yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting talk, by the way. With all this data that you're collecting, are you going to implement any more additional data about carbon emission for consumers? Essentially, because you have all this personalized data already ready to go.
Yeah, so it's not on our roadmap immediately, largely because I think it's hard for customers to contextualize carbon emissions as a metric or as a number. People don't really know what it means. It just sounds like a big number or a small number, depending. What I'd like to do long term, though, and we're working on a proposal with ARPA-E for this, but essentially turn Chai into a platform where you can build other apps and other services on top of it. And I'd love for a carbon emission calculator to come out of a Chai-sponsored hackathon in the future that then allows anyone to go and add that to their dashboard as something that they care about. So right now we're very focused on only kind of the core and what we see as valuable to the 95%. As Chai becomes more of a platform, though, I think you'll see services like that plugging in that service. Yeah, Jeff.
Morning. This is a company question, not a policy or engineering question. All right. There's been discussions as electric cars roll out that they're going to be used for load balancing on micro peak purposes. That seems to impact your revenue model. Could you explain that? Because you seem to be drifting on or building revenue off of arbing on these peaks.
Yeah. So the way that electric vehicles the way a customer will benefit from so when you buy an electric vehicle, the model that I don't see working in the future, and it's one of the ones that the utilities kind of exploring. You buy an electric vehicle, at some point you sign a contract with the utility company or your EV manufacturer does, and now your EV is being used in the grid and you don't even know it, and it's shaved off money from the initial price of your EV. The way I think it needs to, I don't think that's the way it should evolve, that's the way it's happening in some discussions. The way I think it should evolve is the customer should be part of that relationship and that decision on if you use my EV to help balance the grid. And that'll happen fundamentally through, that'll be an additional, essentially a control connection on top of our Power Payday. So you have an EV, there's a power payday, prices spike, which means there's an imbalance in the grid. Boom, you get paid 7 cents for saying my EV between the 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. can participate in the grid. We send you the check, we work with the markets, we work with the utilities to get you that money. So we kind of act as an intermediary there. Because you need a market transaction to facilitate EVs participating in the grid. And I'd like Chai to at least be the consumer-facing aspect to that transaction.
Back here, Paul.
Yeah.
Hi, so I'm going to guess you're a VC-backed C Corp?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you consider, with energy efficiency, triple bottom line, social benefit, B Corp, anything like that?
We considered it, but never had the bandwidth to go back and try to change things. If anyone here knows about that, I'd enjoy learning more about it. Well, let's talk then. But yeah, it's something that's been of interest to us, but not something that's been a high priority.
One last question, Paul.
Yeah.
Cool, it's cool to see you up there.
Yeah.
Cool, it's cool to see you up there. Met you many times at the Caltech E-Club, so
yeah.
Well done. So the question for you is something that a lot of startups run into if they go into healthcare, they go into financial, they go into energy, is it's a much more complicated world with the regulations and government grants and all that stuff. So could you talk a little bit about your journey of discovery and exploration and understanding and experiencing the adventure that is a regulatory or regulated industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we went into this with the kind of mindset, and I guess it still persists today, but there's a lot of companies in this space that provide, so if you guys are familiar with O-Power, if you guys have ever received a billing statement from your utility that says, this is you, this is your neighbor, this is your efficient neighbor, yeah, it's guilt, pure Jewish guilt. So if you get those, that's actually provided by a company called O-Power, which contracts with utilities, provide services like that under the utility brand. So our original idea was we don't want to do things under the auspice of the utility. We want to kind of sidestep all that. And having data be relatively open has been something that allowed us to do that. But traditionally, I guess I'll just go through an example to kind of illustrate the challenges. Traditionally, we received data by a technique called web scraping, where essentially we had a bunch of code that would pretend it was a human, go onto the utility company website, pull down your data every single night, and that's what we would do. We'd use your utility username and password to do so. They would be encrypted, things would be secure, but that's how we would collect your data. In the last year, Edison has kind of realized and taken, so Edison developed this protocol called Green Button Connect, which I mentioned, in which customers sign up in what's called an OAuth mechanism. It's a lot like Facebook. You authenticate Facebook to your Spotify app, and you never actually type in your Facebook password into Spotify. It happens through OAuth, and that's more secure, it's better. So the utilities kind of built this Green Button Connect standard, and they really built a half-ass implementation of it. This standard today actually takes about 8 steps to complete, 42 characters typed, like 17 button clicks. So it's really burdensome. And then because they had built the standard, they called us up and they said, hey, we have this standard out there. You guys need to switch over, or otherwise we're going to remove your data connection. As part of this, we've had to get very involved in the regulatory aspects of it. And we are an agent of the customer. Do we have rights to scrape? And we've actually been learning a lot of this stuff newly ourselves. We've been able to avoid it for quite some time, but because of this data issue, we've kind of been wrapped up in the regulatory nature of it. But at the same time, because it's regulated state by state, you have, the states are competitive with each other. Each state has different things that it allows. So if one state were to shut down a particular revenue stream for us, we can go to a different state. And that's the beautiful thing about the United States of America, is we have a strong state-by-state competitive regulatory atmosphere. It's not true for things like the FDA or medical, but it is true in the utility sphere. And it allows us to diversify our business, revenue-wise, customer-wise, and strategy-wise. So maybe that's kind of the silver lining.
All right, thank you so much for your questions, guys.